All right, we're starting. We're gonna start now. So, welcome to today's webinar. This is the first webinar in the 3-day blitz, first webinar in the series. In today's webinar, we're going to be talking about support and resistance areas. For those of you who've been around Forex for Noobs for quite some time, you'll know that in these webinars, these 3-day webinars, which I do every year, I think this is the 5th year. In these 3-day webinars, I usually discuss candlestick analysis first. But this time we're going to be discussing support and resistance areas first. Actually, before we go into this, I just want to say, just so everyone understands what's going on here, everyone who's watching this as a recording on YouTube when it's posted later, everyone understands what's going on. Basically, something went wrong with this webinar software, and everyone's name is listed as NANA. So everyone's name, as you can see here, is listed as NANA. So I don't know any of your names because they're not appearing. I know what the issue is. I'll have a fix for tomorrow. So when you type a question to me, could you please type your name first and then the question? So type your first name and then the question. That will be hugely helpful for me because I like to know who I'm talking to. I don't want to just be talking to a random person called NANA. So yeah, it would be extremely helpful to me if you could actually type your name out when you ask me a question. So yeah. Anyway, so let's get on with the webinar. Today we're going to be discussing support and resistance areas. Normally I would discuss candlestick analysis in the first webinar in the 3-day blitz series, but we're going to be discussing support and resistance areas now. The reason for discussing support resistance areas and tomorrow discussing candlestick analysis, and the following day, we're going to be discussing entering trades, targets, and stops. The reason we're going to be discussing support and resistance areas first is because I've started to simplify support resistance areas. The way I used to do these webinars is I used to take the easiest subject, which was candlestick analysis, and then I'd follow it with the subject that's slightly harder, which used to be support resistance areas. And then on the third webinar, I would tie everything together. But support and resistance areas, they've kind of changed. They kind of evolved over the last few years, specifically last year and this year. The way I do support resistance areas has changed a lot. And I mean a lot. It's become so much more simple and so much easier. So my support resistance areas, they went from being something that was, I wouldn't say hard, but that a lot of people struggled with, to now being extremely easy to place and extremely easy to use, extremely easy to keep up to date. So support and resistance areas, whoever's saying my messages aren't appearing, they are, because I can see your messages appearing. So, yep. Anyway, support resistance areas have become a lot easier to use. So that's why I'm covering them first today, because a lot of you who have been around Forex for Noobs for quite some time, you know, you're going to know that how my support resistance areas used to be versus how they are now. Another thing to note about today's webinar is my webinars are not flashy and they're not really scripted. I mean, I do have a little bit of notes that I'm working with, but I don't script my webinars. I just kind of talk. I just jump in and discuss the subject because I do this every day, and, you know, not webinars because I trade, well, almost every day, let's say. You know, this is something that I could just talk about, and I'd rather just talk about it more conversationally. So the downside of that is, you know, I might ramble sometimes. I might go off subject because I'll just get wrapped up in talking, and I'll talk, and I'll go off subject. So if that happens, I'm sorry, but we do have an hour and a half here, so I'll be able to cover everything I want to cover anyway. My webinars aren't flashy, they're not really scripted, and I might go off subject, but I'll try my best to stay on subject. So one thing I want from you guys, okay, is the questions and answers. When we get to the questions and answers of this webinar, I want you to please keep the questions on subject. These webinars are going to be split over 3 days, like I've said. First day is support resistance, second day is candlestick analysis, and third day is trading and targets and stops and entering trades and managing trades and all that stuff. The third day is probably going to be the most interesting for most people. So I want to keep these webinars, I want to keep everything on subject because I often get distracted and I don't want to do that with this year's series. So please keep your questions on subject. Today's question should be only on support resistance areas. If you guys see anybody at all that's asking a question that's not directly related to support resistance areas, please kindly remind them that today we're here to talk about support resistance areas. And if they have any trading related questions or candlestick analysis related questions, they should save those questions for tomorrow or the next day. So please kindly remind them, if you see off subject questions, to keep those questions for the next day. And also questions should be held until the end of the webinar. I'll tell you when you can ask questions. It's just because if I stop to answer questions, I won't get through everything properly. Like I said, I kind of get distracted and I get off subject. So please just keep questions until I say it's question time. Okay? For those of you who don't know me, for those of you who are new around here, who am I? I'm Nick. I started trading at the age of 16 in 2003. It wasn't like proper trading when I was 16. It was kind of a little bit of stock market trading with my school. It was a school thing. It was a school project type thing. But that kind of like kicked off my trading career. I started trading Forex when I was around about 18. And for the first 2 years, I was a little bit hit and miss with my Forex trading. And with time, I slowly developed my trading strategy. So my trading strategy, it started way back in, let's say, around about 2005. That's when it started. And it's grown a lot since then. It's changed a lot since then. So, just quickly reading what's going on. All right, everything looks normal. Anyway, so yeah, I've been trading since 2005 Forex, since I was about 18. And I developed my own strategy. So everything you're going to hear today and in the coming days, it's all developed by me. But it is essentially price action. Because I am a price action trader. I don't use any indicators at all. My charts are clean. I'm a price action trader and I kind of taught myself to trade price action. And now I teach other people to trade price action. I started Forex for Noobs in 2006. Forex for Noobs was actually the first price action site online. Although I didn't really call it price action back then. I called it trading without indicators. Price action's a much nicer name for it. So yeah, Forex for Noobs has been around since 2006. And I've been doing these webinars since I think it was about 2013. So this is the 5th in this series of webinars, and I hope to reach the 10th in 5 years. Now, while I do teach a lot of price action, and price action is my passion, I'm also starting to focus a lot on trading psychology. Next month's webinar is going to be on trading psychology. We're going to do another webinar next month, and it's going to be on trading psychology. I'm also launching a podcast on trading psychology. So I will send out that to everyone who attended this webinar. I'll send out a link to my podcast if you guys are interested in hearing that. Anyway, let's get started with the actual stuff, with the actual support resistance area stuff. So today, like I said, we're discussing support resistance areas. So what are support resistance areas? Support and resistance areas are groupings of buyers and sellers. And they're groupings of buyers and sellers which have a strong chance of stalling or reversing price. They allow you to see ahead of time where buyers or sellers might stall. So think about this. Price action is all about trading and analyzing what's happening right now, what price is doing now, because that's what's most important. Indicators lagging. Price action allows you to analyze what's happening right now. But support and resistance areas take that one step further because they allow you to analyze with a high degree of accuracy what might happen when price reaches a certain point. Now, if this sounds like a little bit like magic to you, and it does to me sometimes, it'll start to come together over the course of this webinar and the next few webinars. Support and resistance areas allow you to predict with a high degree of accuracy what price is going to do next, what price is going to do when it approaches that area. You know that it's possible, there's a good chance that it's going to stall in that area. And today I'm going to teach you to place those areas and identify where price is likely to stall. And, think about what that information can do for you. It's amazing for setting your targets. If you know price is going to stall in an area, then you know where to put your target. It's just logical. It's awesome for trading reversals because price often reverses at an area of support resistance. And it's also great for trading continuations because if price breaks through an area of support resistance and comes back down to it, that area acts as a buffer and keeps it above that area or below if it was a short trade, which we'll discuss more and more over the course of these 3 days. So, like I said, support and resistance allows you to predict with a high degree of accuracy what price will do next. For those of you who have been around Forex for Noobs since 2006, 2007, you will notice today an evolution in my support resistance areas. I mean, my support resistance areas have always been evolving. But support and resistance used to be one of the most complicated things. And now it's kind of one of the easiest things in my strategy. Placing support resistance areas is simple. Keeping them updated is also simple. Back in 2007, 2006, I used to split my support resistance areas. I used to do constant lines and scalp lines, I think they were called. So constant lines were like areas that were placed based on data from, years previous. And scalp lines were areas that were placed based on the most recent data. But I don't do that anymore. These days, it's just very, very simple. It's all been simplified and it's all been made easy for me. And that makes it also easy for you guys. Someone mentioned that, is this pre-recorded because it's on YouTube? It's not pre-recorded because it's on YouTube. It's YouTube live broadcasting. So I'm broadcasting this live through YouTube. Anyway, so when we're placing support resistance areas, trying to identify support resistance areas, there's a few kind of general rules, a few things that you want to know about support resistance areas. And these are the things that you always want to keep in mind. When we're talking about support resistance areas, you always want to keep these in mind. Basically, when you're looking at placing support resistance areas, you always want to be thinking about these 3 things. Recent data is more important. Recent data. What do I mean by recent data? I mean the most recent candles on your chart and the later those candles appeared. So the most recent data on your chart is always the most important. The fresher the candle, the newer the candle, the more important it is for placing support resistance. So if a bounce formed a week ago, it's a lot more important than a bounce that formed 6 months ago. If the bounce formed 6 months ago, it's more important than a bounce that formed a year ago. The more recent the data, the more important. So when you're placing support resistance areas, you're always looking for the most recent data. Another thing is to adjust your support resistance areas regularly. Every single day that you're trading, you want to look at your support resistance areas and you want to kind of adjust them and shift them around. Now, this is a big change to my support resistance areas. I used to place them and leave them for a month. Now I adjust them regularly. And why do I adjust them regularly? Because of what I just said. Recent data is the most important. So we want to adjust our support resistance areas to the most recent data. It is important. Adjusting your support resistance areas is vital. And the third and final point is support and resistance areas are not perfect. What do I mean by that? If support and resistance areas are not perfect, for anyone who says it's out of focus, just hit the little cogwheel to the bottom and change it to 720p. 720p will make it a lot clearer. Yeah, it says it down here, see? Use the cogwheel for better video quality, click it, and click 720p. Anyway, so support and resistance areas are not perfect. And what do I mean by that? I mean that when we're placing support resistance areas on our chart, and this is something that you're going to have to get over. Okay, you need to get over this because I know I try to teach this to so many people, and a lot of people are stuck on this concept of placing their support resistance areas and getting them perfect. But support resistance areas are not perfect. They're never perfect. You cannot get them perfect. It just doesn't happen. Support resistance areas are kind of like a best guess thing. When you place your support resistance area, you have to know it's not going to be perfect. It's just support and resistance is in that general area. So in that general area is where you're expecting sellers or buyers to stall or to turn around. Support and resistance is not perfect. It's about kind of identifying the general area in which price is going to bounce, not about identifying the specific line, because there is no specific line. It just doesn't exist. It's about the area, the general area. So keep that in mind. These are the three most important things. And if I start to get questions on these things, I might get a little annoyed, because I'm telling you guys right at the start of this webinar, recent data is the most important. So recent data is the most important. You need to adjust your areas regularly to keep in line with recent data, and support resistance areas cannot be perfect. But I say this so many times about the support resistance areas cannot be perfect, and people still say, hey Nick, my support resistance area is 20 pips above yours. Why am I placing them wrong? But you have to remember they're not perfect. Because I place my support resistance area here and you place it 20 pips above mine, it's still in the same general area. So who cares? They're not perfect. You're not going to place them the exact same spot where I have them. It just doesn't happen. As long as they're in the general area, as long as they're close, that's fine. And you may ask, if you don't have them perfect, then how can you trade from them? And that's what we're going to discuss in the third webinar in this series. That's what's going to be in the third webinar. I'm going to discuss how to actually trade from these support resistance areas. So we're going to keep that until Thursday. No, I didn't stop talking. Everyone should be able to hear me fine. Anyway, so support resistance areas aren't perfect. That is something that you need to remember, and it's something that you need to keep in mind while we go through all these areas. Oh, that was the final slide. So yeah, the easiest way to learn about support resistance areas anyway is to place them. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to go through my charts and we're going to place support resistance areas. Questions should be kept till after. And we're just going to do this and make it full screen. No, but if it's full screen, then let's start with this kind of full screen, and then we'll work from there. Move this little image onto the screen. These are just kind of like a few notes that I thought I would add about placing support resistance areas. And these are kind of things, some more things to keep in mind about placing support resistance areas. It's mostly what I've already discussed. Don't worry about accuracy. Don't worry about keeping them perfect. But there's a few things here that we'll discuss as we place them. So we're going to get started on placing support resistance areas on my chart now. No, this is not CTrader. This is tradingview.com. It's not a trading platform. It is purely a charting platform. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I think they also have some... they're trying to make it into a trading platform, but it's mostly a charting platform. These are my charts, and I love these charts. They're the best charts I've ever had. TradingView is a paid piece of software. I don't get any money for recommending TradingView to people. I just recommend it because I love them. TradingView is awesome. They have given me the best charts I've ever had, and I can access them on all my devices, my tablet, etc. The same charts. Anyway, I'll stop going on about TradingView. Just someone asked what platform it is. So yeah, let's get started with placing some support resistance areas. Now, placing support resistance areas, like I said, is pretty easy. It used to be slightly more difficult, but now it has become one of the easiest parts of my trading strategy. So Wait, let me just... I'm going to start with GBP/USD because EUR/USD, I still remember the support resistance areas. We might just not do EUR/USD because, when I do one of these webinars, I clear the support resistance areas and place them from scratch. But with a pair like EUR/USD, I kind of always have my support resistance areas there, and it's a pair I look at often, so I remember where they are. So I feel it's kind of like, I don't know, a bit like cheating because I already know where they are before I'm going to place them. We might end up placing them on GBP/USD, on EUR/USD, but let's do some other pairs first. We'll start with GBP/USD, then we'll do a more complicated pair. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yep, that's why I created this image down here. I thought that this image would stop people from asking, but apparently not. I'll try and make it more descriptive for tomorrow's webinar, hopefully. Anyway, so let's get started placing these support resistance areas. You don't need to ask those questions. I already know exactly, the timeframes and stuff. I'm going to mention all of that as we're placing them, so you don't need to ask those questions. Anyway, so when you're placing support resistance areas, when I do it anyway, I've been using this year and towards the end of last year mostly the daily and the 12-hour charts. So I switch between daily and 12-hour. I don't really often go any lower than that. I place my support resistance areas on the daily and the 12-hour chart. The reason for that is because if I were to go down to, for example, to the 6-hour chart, my support resistance areas are going to be too close together. So I'm going to end up having, like someone was actually saying earlier in the chat, support resistance areas everywhere. There'd be one there, one here, one there probably, and they'd be so close together that it's almost impossible to trade. And I don't like having that. I don't like having that with support resistance areas. I like having my support resistance areas spread far apart. The smaller timeframes, they give you too much data. You get too much data because you're seeing too many of the bounces. So I like to smooth those out by going up to the... damn it, that thing is really actually annoying. I'm gonna use this. Yeah, it still comes up, damn it. Anyway, like I said, my webinars aren't scripted. It's not a Forex for Noobs webinar without some technical difficulties. So I don't like having my support resistance areas too closely spaced together. So I'd rather place them on the 1 day chart and the 12-hour chart. Because if you're placing them based on those charts, they tend to be more spread apart because you're seeing a lot less of the bounces. And that to me is important. I want my support resistance areas spread apart. I don't want to concentrate on all the tiny little support resistance areas in between. I want to concentrate on the big ones, the important ones, because that's where I want to take my trades from. Yep, support questions at the end. I'm going to disable the chat actually. Questions should be kept till the end. I've disabled the chat. I'll re-enable it towards the end. I keep getting distracted, so we'll keep questions to the end. I might re-enable the chat in 5 or 10 minutes. We'll see how it goes. So let's get started with placing support resistance areas. We're going to start with GBP/USD, and then we might do a slightly more complicated pair. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. So placing support resistance areas is very simple these days. It's been simplified a lot. You start with the daily or the 12-hour chart. If you don't have access to 12-hour charts, it means your trading platform is not good. If you're trading from MT4, you're trading with 10-year-old technology, and you should update that technology and get a platform that's actually usable, that's actually using today's technology, if you get what I mean. So, yeah, MT4 kind of sucks. For charting anyway, it sucks these days. 12-hour charts are very, very important in my opinion. So with the 8-hour charts, 8-hour charts are awesome, 6-hour charts are awesome, and you don't get that stuff with MT4. So there are other options out there. So I place my support resistance areas mostly on 12-hour and daily. If you don't have access to 12-hour charts and you refuse to give up MT4, then you can place them on the daily. But having the 12-hour as a filter is very nice. And you will in fact see today that most of the placements happen on the 12-hour more so than the daily charts. Keep an eye on these notes down here. They're important and there's something to remember. When placing support resistance areas, like I said towards the start of this webinar, recent data is the most important. Recent data is always the most important. More recent the bounce, the more important it is. Use both body and wick bounces. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that this here is a wick bounce, that is a wick bounce. So when the wick comes down, if we're talking about body bounces, that up there is a body bounce. That's a body bounce. Whereas this is a wick bounce. So wick bounce here, body bounces there. So both of these are important when you're placing support resistance areas. Both of them are important. I tend to place my support resistance areas around the body bounce more so than the wick bounce, but I'm also willing to place it around the wick bounce. Also, price stalling is important. When price stalls in an area, it is also a sign of support resistance areas. So if price just stalls there instead of turning around, like here, see this is a sign of price stalling, that is also important. Price doesn't necessarily need to reverse in order to place a support resistance area. Bounces are a lot more important, but when price stalls, when price slows down for a significant amount of time, it is also a sign of a support resistance area, so keep that in mind. As little as 2 bounces are important. Wait, that doesn't make sense. As little as 2 bounces are needed to place support resistance areas. Sometimes these days I place my support resistance areas with just 1 bounce. I know that sounds scary, but I'll describe that more as I place these support resistance areas. So yeah, let's get started with placing support resistance areas. Okay. My first one is going to go around about here. Now, why am I placing it here? Well, like I've always said, like I said from the start of this webinar, recent data is the most important. So the most recent data is there and there, those 2 bounces. And also, like I've said a few times in this webinar, accuracy is not important. Just because they're not bouncing from the exact same line, it doesn't matter. It's not important. All that's important is that it's bouncing from the same general area. And this is bouncing from the same general area. So my support resistance area is going roughly at this point. Now, a lot of people are probably going to ask, I'm predicting these questions already. I've disabled the chat, but I'm predicting these questions already. How wide does this area have to be? This area does not have to be wide. It can be that small. It can be, well, no, it can't be that big. But the wideness of the area doesn't matter. A lot of people in the advanced course, a lot of people in the forum, they don't even place that area there. I just like having that area there because I think it looks better. That's really the only reason I have it there, because it looks better, because it is an area of support resistance. It's not a line of support resistance. So I like it to look like an area. This area is just there because it looks nice. That is all. It doesn't have to be a specific width. As long as you identify the general support resistance line, so roughly here, it's roughly in this area, then that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to just identify the line. So the next one is going to go here. Why am I placing it there? Because of this bounce here. That's a strong bounce. It's a single bounce, but then we also have a wick bounce here, which you'll note. See that wick bounce? So we got kind of 2 bounces, 1 wick bounce, 1 body bounce, all good. Easy support resistance area. You're seeing how easy it is to place this. There's pretty much nothing to it. Where's the next one going to go? Take a guess. Take a guess. It's going to go here. Why is it going there? Well, we have a bounce there. Price bounced away from there. Strong body bounce. Only 1 bounce, but that's fine. It's recent data. I prefer 2 bounces. Really, I would prefer 2 bounces, but if it's 1 bounce, it's enough. And I'll explain why in a second. I know that sounds scary, placing support resistance areas from 1 bounce, but I'll explain that in a minute. So where's the other area going to go? Yeah, that's good. I'm going to place it here because we got a bounce there and a bounce there. Okay. So when we're looking at support resistance areas, what we want to do is we want to place them based on bounces. The more, you look for the most recent bounce and you place it based on that. So here we have 2 recent bounces. That's an easy placement. Here we have 1 recent bounce. That's an easy placement. I mean, you could call that a bounce almost. See, let me zoom into this. That there, that's almost a bounce, but it's only a little bit, not really. So we're just looking at the most recent data we can find, and we're placing our support resistance areas based on the most recent data. So the most recent bounces are here. I've placed them there. Most recent bounce is here. I've placed it here. Here, the most recent bounce is there, and there to some degree. So that's all very recent data. So I'm placing it there. And wait, let me place the thing around them. I hate having just lines on my chart. I really do. I like having these around it. It doesn't feel right to me unless it has these around it. So like I said, the width of these areas is not important at all, but I like having them there. It's just a visual thing for me. A lot of people who trade my strategy, a lot of people in the advanced course, they do not use these areas. They just use the line. I just like having them there. So one important thing, and I'm going to re-enable chat because I feel like there's going to be some questions here. One important thing to note about support resistance areas, and it's one thing that I really hope that everyone here understands and can take home with them today. Accuracy is not important. And like I said, that is a scary thing, accuracy not being important. It is somewhat scary because, people want their support resistance areas to be as accurate as possible, but it's just not possible to have extremely accurate support resistance areas. So you need to place them in the general area where you think support resistance exists. And that's what I've done here on this GBP/USD chart. Now, what if you're wrong? And that is a very important question. What if you're wrong? What if this placement here is wrong? What if this is not a good support resistance area? And a lot of people ask me that question, but my response to them is always, who cares? So what if it's wrong? What's the worst thing that's going to happen if it's wrong? Price is going to come up to the area. It's going to cut straight through it as if it doesn't exist. Big deal. And if price does that, let's say on GBP/USD over the next few days, price just pushes up through here and it breaks straight through that area as if that area doesn't exist. This area, I mean. So it pushes straight through that area as if it doesn't exist. Then, it's not really going to have any effect on me. All I'll do is I'll adjust the support resistance area. So I might place it up here because we also have some bounces around about up here. Not as significant, but there's also bounces around about up here. So if price pushes up and breaks through the first one I placed and it stalls right here, then that would be the evidence I need to move my support resistance area to here, right? So it doesn't matter if you get it wrong with your first placement because price is going to confirm that support resistance area for you. Price is going to confirm that support resistance area for you. When price pushes through an area, it confirms it for you. So I had it roughly there. So when you're placing support resistance areas, placing them accurately is not incredibly important. You just place them generally where you think price has bounced from and where you think the support resistance area exists. That's what's important. That's the important thing. You're placing them based on the most recent bounces you see. You're placing them based on recent data. And when you place them, you let price confirm them for you. Now, again, what do I mean by price confirm them for you? Basically, when price approaches an area, if it bounces from it, if it stalls there for a while, if it stalls for like 4 or 5 candles and then it continues through, or if it just outright approaches the area. Wait, if it outright approaches the area, then it stalls there for 1 candle or 2 candles, and then it completely reverses. That is price confirming that support resistance area for you. If price instead pushes up and breaks straight through the area, and then it stalls here, and then it bounces away, then you might think about adjusting that support resistance area. Then you might say, okay, that support resistance area sucks. It didn't hold price back at all. Then I can adjust it. So, you know, this is what I mean by accuracy is not terribly important. And you shouldn't obsess about having your support resistance areas being incredibly accurate. That is not important. When you look at my support resistance areas, because I post my support resistance areas to Forex for Noobs, I'll give you guys a link to, wait. Just bringing up the link. I'll give you guys a link to this this page. But yeah, these are my support resistance areas. I post them here, so you can confirm. You can place your support resistance areas and then compare them to mine. Only the ones up here. Most of you will be able to see only the ones up here. So when you place your support resistance areas, you can compare them to mine. And when you compare them to mine, if they're not incredibly accurate, if they're not right on top of mine, if they're 10, 20 pips away, don't worry about it. Don't freak out. Just, it's all good. It's all fine. All right, there's a lot of questions. How can I be accurate in placing orders and placing trades? We're going to discuss those in the coming webinars. That's going to be discussed in tomorrow's webinar and the following webinar. That's all going to be covered. Don't worry about it. I know today's webinar is a little scary because placing support resistance areas not being incredibly accurate. It's all going to be discussed in coming webinars. Okay, so let's keep placing support resistance areas. We're already getting a little sidetracked. Yeah, AUD USD, or should we do a slightly more complicated pair? Let's just do AUD USD. Let's start with AUD USD. And I'm going to start placing my support resistance areas a little faster and stop talking through them as much. And when we do that, when I start placing them faster, we'll be able to get through like 5 or 6 pairs today easily. We'll do AUD USD and then we'll do some more complicated pairs. All right, so AUD USD, we'll start with 12 hour, but I flick around between 12 hour and daily. Yeah, we'll do New Zealand USD, we'll do GBP, JPY, that's all good. We'll do all of them. This is the 12-hour time frame. We're switching between 12-hour and daily. I place my support resistance areas on 12-hour and daily. So where am I placing the first support resistance area? I mean, it stands out. It's very, very obvious. Damn it. Okay. First support resistance area is going there. Why is it going there? Because keep in mind, remember, most recent data is most important. We got 3 recent bounces from around this area, so that's fine. You know, I'm not going to worry about trying to place it right there or right there because the accuracy is not incredibly important. Just placing it here, that's the general support resistance area. It's roughly around about there. Next support resistance area, roughly here. I'm placing it there because it's got 2 recent bounces there. So a bounce here and a bounce there. So that's a, you know, pretty good support resistance area, it looks like. Perhaps a little higher, but roughly around there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, so next support resistance area. Price bounced from there today, so that looks pretty decent. And it's also got a bounce there. Let's look at it on the 12-hour. Yeah, see price bounce from there today. It's also got a bounce there. So that looks like a pretty good support resistance area, pretty simple one. Also got a bounce here, actually. So, yeah. This is all we're doing. We're just looking for recent bounces, just looking at recent bounces. Perhaps around there looks good. So let's see if we could place one there. Yeah, it's got a bounce there too. That's towards the end of 2015. It's got a slight bounce right here, then 2 bounces there. So bounce there, bounce there, bounce there, bounce there, bounce there. This is actually quite an obvious support resistance area. It's a pretty strong one. So yeah, I'm gonna throw that one up. See what it looks like on the daily. Doesn't look as strong on the daily. These 2 bounces here, they don't look as strong. It looks okay on the 12 hour though. Yeah, I'm going to keep this one. It looks really good on the 12 hour. So let's just keep it. I remember how I said wick bounces and body bounces are important. So here we got a wick bounce here, a wick bounce there, a body bounce there. These aren't very strong bounces though. That's kind of an okay bounce, that body bounce there. But if you go back, this is not, it's around about September. We've got some bounces from here too. Bounce there, bounce there, bounce there. So this looks like a pretty decent area. I'm going to keep this one. I mean, worst case scenario. Whoops. What happens if I'm wrong with this support resistance area? And this is the thing, the point I want to try to get across more than anything today. What happens if I'm wrong about this support resistance area? What happens? A lot of people freak out and they want to get their support resistance areas right. They want to get them perfect. But what happens if I'm wrong? Then price is probably just going to come down and move straight through that area as if it doesn't exist. And then it's going to bounce from around about here. It's going to bounce from this area down here because that might be the better area. That might be the actual support resistance area. If that happens, what do? I just say, oh, okay, cool. Price is bouncing from around there. Let me move the support resistance area there. It doesn't cost you anything to move your support resistance areas, and adjusting your support resistance areas daily is something that you should be doing anyway. So if you get it wrong the first time, you know, you shouldn't be too concerned. They don't have to be perfect. When you place them the best you can, and then you let price confirm them for you, because that's what's important at the end of the day. That's what price action is. It's about what's happening right now and what price is doing now, not what it did 6 months ago, not what it did a year ago. It's about what price is doing now. And if you keep that in mind, what price is doing now, then you'll start to understand that your support resistance areas don't have to be super accurate. They don't have to be right here. They don't have to be exactly in the perfect spot. Your support resistance areas can be just kind of close enough. And when you have them close enough, you can adjust them as price pushes through the areas and towards the areas. As price pushes through here, if it doesn't bounce from there, I can adjust the support resistance area. And that is the most important thing that you should take home today. Accuracy is not vital, because price, as it pushes through the area, is going to confirm that support resistance area for you. If price ignores that area, then you know that it's not a good area and you can adjust it. If price bounces from the area, if it stalls on the area, if it has some reaction, then you keep the support resistance area. So, like I said, I play support resistance areas on the daily and on the 12 hour, both those time frames. And these look pretty solid on both. This is the only one I'm not too sure about, this one here. But it's fine. We'll just throw it up and we'll see what happens when price pushes down to the area. A lot of people ask me, how do you get more confident placing support resistance areas? And the answer to that is dead simple. You just place them every day. Place your support resistance areas. Next day, delete them and replace them. Place them on new pairs. Place them on as many pairs as you can. If you just keep placing your support resistance areas and trading from those areas, you'll start to get more and more comfortable with placing your support resistance areas. Why am I unsure about the support resistance area? Someone's asking me to explain. That's a pretty good question. Just because these other areas, they have pretty strong bounces. So for example, this one has a strong bounce. This one has a current bounce that's happening right now. Well, that's the same one actually. The one above it has these two recent bounces. It has that wick bounce too. Whereas on the daily chart, this one here, this one that I'm unsure about, it had a bounce back here, which was pretty significant. But since then, you know, look at these two candles. They just kind of cut straight through it. And on the daily chart, it appears that price hasn't really respected the support area. On the 12-hour chart, we see a slightly different story. On the 12-hour chart, we see the bounces from this area. So, you know, that's where I'm not too sure about this area. On the daily chart, it doesn't look as strong, but on the 12-hour chart, it looks okay. So, you know, I'm willing to say this is a support resistance area, and I'm willing to let price either prove me right or prove me wrong. Price can prove me right by respecting the support resistance area next time it approaches it. So if price comes down to here and it bounces away from it, it could prove me right, or it could prove me wrong by pushing straight through it. I don't care what happens either way, because if indecision, you know, if we get clear signs that price is going to reverse when it approaches this area, then I'll enter the reversal trade, and, you know, it will just be hopefully a normal trade for me. If price pushes straight through it, then I've lost nothing, and I'll just adjust the support resistance area. All right, we'll keep the other questions to the end. I want to get through as many support resistance areas as possible. I want to do as many pairs as possible. Let's just do next on the list. Just do USD CAD. Okay, yeah, USD CAD. It's a bit easy though. We're at 47 minutes. I've allotted an hour and a half for this webinar. Yeah, let's just do USD CAD. We'll do GBP, JPY, and New Zealand USD, two pairs that people ask for also. And we'll do one of these complicated pairs, maybe AUD, JPY, AUD, New Zealand. We should have time to do them all. So I'm not going to do USD MXN. I've never traded that pair. I don't even know what pair that is. So sounds like Mexican, but no, I don't trade commodities. I'm not going to do XAU USD. I don't trade commodities. AUD CHF, sure, we could do that if you want. Okay, so first one is going to go here. Simple. Big, strong bounce. Next one. I'm going to place it here. Now, this looks like maybe a bit of a weird place. Oh, God, I hate that thing. Yeah. Maybe about here. Looks like a bit of a weird placement, and it is a bit of a weird placement, but it's pretty much the only sign of support resistance I can see. Because it's got a small bounce here, and then it's stalled on its way through. Remember how I said price stalling is important? Price stalled around here, and then it bounced from here. There is no distance between support resistance areas. It doesn't matter. You just place support resistance areas where you see them. There's no specific distance between them. Next one. Yeah. I'm going to place it here. I'm placing it here because of this bounce here, this bounce here, this bounce, and that bounce. So I'm placing support, this support resistance area based on those bounces there. Next one. Yeah, okay. This one is kind of obvious because of that bounce there and that bounce there. But you also note that price stalled on its way up through here. So see how price stalled on its way up? That's kind of just a little bit of extra evidence that the support resistance here. You know, mainly I'm placing it based on these large bounces here, right? Because that's what's most important, the bounces. Bounces are most important. And it struggled to get through here. So bounces are way more important. But also, you know, price stalling is important, and price stalled through there. So that looks like a pretty good support resistance area. Just looking at that bounce there, but I don't know. It's not really a significant bounce, is it? All right, so this one is a bit tough. It's a little bit harder to place this one. We could go with here because price stalled there, right? And it slightly bounced away, but it didn't really fully bounce away, did it? Let's look at it on the daily. Yeah, on the daily, it just stalled there. So I'm not too sure about that one. If we were to place it here, we could see a strong bounce there. And I think that's all the data we're going to get because price hasn't been up there for a long time. Yeah, I'm not going to go back to 2003. I don't care about what happened in 2003. We don't have very much data on USD CAD, so it's a bit tough to get support resistance areas on here. But we do have a strong bounce there that occurred on the daily back in September. So yeah, I'm going to place it there. That's going to be my USD CAD support resistance areas. Actually, no, we should place slightly lower ones because price has just broken through. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. All right, so I'm going to place it here. Why am I placing it here? Because we've got some body bounces here. Got body bounces there. So it's bouncing from the body of the candle. Body bounce there. Here I kind of cut through it, but you know, it's only a few times, so I'm not too worried with that. And like I said, price is going to confirm this area for us. If price approaches here and it pushes straight through it, then I will readjust this support resistance area. If indecision forms, so if candles form on this support resistance area, then it confirms that it is in fact a good area of support, and I will look into trading it. You know, I might take a trade from it. So yeah, USD CAD, easy. The key to placing good support resistance areas is to just place them based on the first bounces you see. I'm seeing a lot of questions. The key is just to place them based on the first bounces you see. It's easy. I'm going to do it really fast here on USD JPY. So I'm going to place one there. I'm going to place one, damn it. Place one roughly there. Place one there. And Yeah, that looks pretty good. I hate that little thing that pops down whenever I try to... I'm going to have to fix that for the next webinar. Going full screen kind of sucks. There's also a bounce here, kind of. Yeah. Yeah, that looks good to me. So those are my support resistance areas for USD/JPY. You can see how fast I place them. It's always a little harder when price kind of just pushes straight through and you don't get very many bounces. But, you know, these ones were pretty easy to place. We got a bounce there, a bounce there. Price stalled on its way down through here. So that makes that one clear. For this top one, we got a strong bounce there. That bounce is really strong, so I'm going to place it just based on that single bounce. But if you look to the left here, we also have a bounce there. This one here, placed mostly based on that bounce, but we also have a bounce here. Keep in mind, these are areas, so they don't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be right on top of that line. This is also part of that bounce. Let me remove it. So see this line here? That is also part of this support resistance area. We have a bounce there. We have two bounces there. We have a strong bounce here. I don't know, that one probably shifted down around here. So it counts for this bounce and for that bounce. So there you go, USD/JPY support resistance areas. I'm going to get these and just draw these around it. How many times does support resistance area have to be broken for it to be invalid? It doesn't matter. I don't care if a support resistance area is broken. Just because it breaks, it doesn't mean that buyers or sellers stop grouping around their support resistance areas. They last for ages. I adjust them, but I never really remove them. People were asking for New Zealand USD. We'll just do it because it's next on the list. New Zealand USD support resistance areas. So, I mean, take a wild guess where I'm going to place the first support resistance area. What stands out at you? And see, this is the key to placing support resistance areas. It's what's most obvious, what stands out to you. Do I have a minimum distance between support resistance areas? No, I just place them wherever I see them. If support resistance areas are close together, then I just don't trade in that area. There's no minimum distance. There can't be a minimum distance because that just doesn't make any sense. Let's say you have support resistance there, right? And then you have one here. You can't say to yourself, now I'm not saying they're this close together on this chart. I'm just saying imagine they were this close together. You can't say to yourself, oh, wow, that seems too close. So I'm just going to ignore that and pretend it doesn't exist. And I just won't trade. I won't take any caution in that area. I'm just going to pretend it doesn't exist. You know, you can't do that. You can't approach trading like that. That's not how price works. If there are two support resistance areas that are extremely close together, you place them. You just throw them up on your chart. And in that area, you just avoid trading. Because support resistance is too close, you probably won't be able to take any good trades because price is just going to get stuck in between those areas. So there is no minimum distance. You just place your support resistance areas wherever you see them. If they are too close together, it just means that area is too messy to trade in. No minimum distance. Good question, but yeah, no minimum distance. What's the ideal distance between support resistance areas? There is no ideal distance. You just place them where you see them. Support resistance is wherever support resistance is. You place them, and if you place them based on the daily and the 12-hour chart, there'll be a decent distance apart. There is no ideal distance. It varies from pair to pair. There'll be a decent distance apart. You just place them where you see them. Am I ignoring some support resistance areas by sticking to a higher time frame? Most definitely, I am ignoring minor support resistance that's not going to affect my trades, support resistance areas that I'm not too worried about. They all exist on the lower time frames. If you look at the lower time frames, you will see more support resistance. So on the lower time frame, I can see this one here too. But I don't care about that one. It's not going to affect me in my trades. Sure, it might stall price sometimes, and if it does, I might lose a trade because of it. But losing trades is part of trading, and most of my trades are occurring on the higher time frames. I'm not too bothered with this minor support resistance areas, these tiny little support resistance areas. When I enter a trade, I trust that the trend is strong enough to smash through these little support resistance areas because they, to me, are insignificant. So yeah, I most definitely am ignoring some minor support resistance on smaller time frames, but it's not affecting my trades. Most of my trades are still profitable, and that's what matters in the end. Do you play support resistance areas on the 12-hour and daily charts? As a day trader, would this be the ideal time frame to place your trades? Yes, also on small time frames. All these support resistance areas are used on all my time frames. I use the same support resistance areas on the 3-hour chart as I do on the daily chart. I place them based on the higher time frames, and I trade them on all time frames. Anyway, let's keep going with placing these support resistance areas. First one is going here, up here. Obvious reasons, very obvious. I mean, I'm sure you guys can see why I'm placing it here. Strong bounce, wick bounce, strong bounce there. Even here, I guess you could call that part of the overall bounces. So several strong bounces, easy to see. Next one, where's that going? It's going down there. Why? Strong bounce, strong bounce. Current bounce that's happening right now. Price is stalling on top of that, and it looks like it's bouncing away. Wick bounce there also. I mean, it's just, these two are just so obvious. I don't think they really need much explanation. Next one, I'm just going to throw it up here. Strong bounce there, very strong bounce. If I see a bounce that strong, I have no problem placing a support resistance area based on a single bounce. I mean, it hit that area and then it moved down for a very long time, and it moved down a very long way. So that's a good enough sign for me to place a support resistance area. Okay, let's place some more support resistance areas on New Zealand USD. Ooh, what did I just do? Switch to the next pair by mistake. And now, okay. TradingView.com is my charting platform. All right, so let's play some New Zealand USD charts, New Zealand USD support resistance areas. The support resistance areas got wiped out because I had to refresh. Something went wrong. So let's just start placing them again. There were the two obvious ones we placed here. And then I placed another one roughly up here based on that bounce. We need a lower support resistance area. All right, this one's a little tricky because you could place it there based on that bounce, but you could also place it here. So why would I place it here over here? I'm not sure really, because I'm not really sure if I should place it here or here. No, I'm going to place it here. So why am I placing it here as opposed to down here? I'm placing it here because here we have more bounces. We have a wick bounce there that's pretty strong. We have a bounce here before it broke through, but then we have a bounce here again. So, you know, I'd rather place it here. I feel more comfortable placing it there because we have more bounces there. Now, like I've been saying a few times in this webinar, what happens if I'm wrong? Okay, so what happens if this support resistance area should have been placed here as opposed to here? What happens is price is going to push down to here. It's going to ignore this area I have. It's going to push further it's going to stall here, and it might form a reversal trade here. Now, if it forms a reversal trade here, it's not as if I'm just going to say, oh my God, no, my support resistance area is too high. I cannot possibly take this reversal trade. I can't trade New Zealand USD because my support resistance area is too high. I placed it wrong a week ago and now I can't take the trade. That's not going to happen. My support resistance area is just going to be moved down to there. I'll just say, okay, we're getting indecision forming here. We're getting price stalling here. It's quite clear that the support area is in fact here and it's not up here where I originally placed it. So I'm going to adjust the support resistance area. That's why I say accuracy is not terribly important, because your accuracy is not the most important thing. What is important is that you place it in the general area. If price comes through that area and ignores it and it forms below or above that area, then all you do is adjust your support resistance area. You adjust it to fit the most recent data. If price stalls on top of here, I'll move my support resistance area down to there. But for now, I'm going to push my support resistance area up to here because it's got several bounces from there. And it just makes more sense to me to place it here. Also got a bounce there. So that looks good to me. It looks like a good set of support resistance areas. Worst case scenario, I'll have to adjust this lower one and pull it down when price reaches there. Best case scenario, price stalls on top of this area and it bounces from there and I get to take an awesome trade there. Yeah, that looks good to me. All right. GP, AUD. Someone wanted... What pair were you guys asking for? There was one that was somewhat popular. It was GP, JPY, I think. We already did USD CAD. I think it was GBP JPY. I already have support resistance areas on GBP JPY. Well, let me go ahead and remove them. Obviously, you know, my support resistance areas, I already have support resistance areas on pairs and I removed them for the webinar because if I didn't have support resistance areas on pairs, I couldn't trade. So yeah, I didn't remove the GP, JPY ones. And now that I've seen them, I know exactly where they were just placed. So it's kind of a cop out to just place them, but I'm just going to go ahead and place them for you guys. And I'll explain each placement and you'll understand why I'm placing it there. So first one's going to go here. Price just is bouncing from here right now. So it's quite clear that there is support resistance there. It's hard to, you know, to say that there is no support resistance there. It's very clear. It's very obvious support resistance there. Perhaps one there. It's got a bounce there. Let's see. Yeah, I guess we could place one there. What about here? That seems more significant, but I guess we could place both of them, really. Yeah, both of them make sense. All right, next support. Oops. Next support resistance area here. Strong bounce there. I'll bounce there too. Now, as it was coming down, that's obvious, okay. It's just going to be placed there based on those two bounces. Yeah, GP JPY is actually quite easy pair to place support resistance on. That actually went exactly where I wanted it with the paste. Yeah, right there. Based on those bounces there. So, these look like some pretty good support resistance areas for GBP, JPY. Yeah. All right, these are my support resistance areas for GBP, JPY. So let's go through why I placed each one of these. The first one is a strong bounce from here, and it's a bounce that's currently ongoing. We could see price bouncing away from it now. So that's quite clear that the support down here. Next support resistance area, this one is based on this bounce here. It's a strong bounce, and then on its way down, price stalled through here. It was a kind of a weekend, but it still stalled through here and it gapped through here. So that's a sign that there is maybe support resistance here, but it's mostly about that bounce there. That's the most important thing. All right, the one above that, it's based on this bounce here and that bounce there. So those are two pretty strong bounces. Obvious why this one's gone there. This one here, it has a bounce here, a very minor bounce. Yeah, like very minor. It stalled a little bit, just a single candle through there. So that doesn't look too significant. But as we pull back, it has a strong bounce there and a strong bounce there. You know, this is going back a while still, but it's still recent data. It has two strong bounces there. Now, this one we don't really have to place. It's not that important. We could take this one. Why is it copying the lines now over and over? Okay. We could take this one or leave it. It doesn't have to be placed. I'm just going to keep it there because we did see a reaction from it here. And we did see price stall there. But if price pushes through this area again and it doesn't really react at this level, I'll probably just remove this one because it's placed based mostly on data that's pretty old. This one here is recent data, so this is a really, really strong bounce. I mean, I'm placing it based on a single bounce. Bam, strong bounce there, easy placement. And this one up here is placed based on these kind of recent bounces. September last year, price bounced from here and from there. So that's, you know, easy placements. Yeah, so we got GBP, JPY placed. How far back do I go? As far back as I need to. You know, sometimes if I have no recent data, I'll have to go back to 2013, 2012. I prefer not to go back that far. Recent data is most important, but if there is no recent data, you need to look for the most recent data. Sometimes the most recent data is in 2010. So then you place your support resistance areas based on that data. Now, when you're placing your support resistance areas based on that data, generally speaking, you want to be very careful with that support resistance area. If you're placing your support resistance area based on bounces from 2010, you know, you want to be careful when you're trading them in 2016. You might just not take a trade there until that support resistance area proves itself, proves that it's still a good support resistance area. So it's up to you how you do that. We'll discuss more about that specifically in the final webinar because we're going to be discussing trading, and then it kind of makes more sense to discuss that during the trading webinar. Nick, why do you place a line if it's an area? Why not just place an area? That is just because I have a forum and I have to talk to people about trading on a day-to-day basis. I have a lot of students, and if I had just an area on my chart, so if I had just like an area, wrong tool. Yeah, if I had just an area like this, it would be harder to tell people roughly where support resistance is. That's why I just place a line. I really just place it because it's easier to discuss it with people. Instead of saying, oh, it's roughly between 180 and 182, I can just say 181. So yeah, it's just an ease of use thing for me, placing it as a line. If you want, you could just place it as an area, but then a lot of people do the opposite. They just place a single line and then they visualize the area around it. It's up to you how you go with placing them. I just place them like this because I like the look of it. It's just really a look thing to me. The area itself is not a specific width. You just have to recognize that price is going to bounce from that general area. TradingView is the platform. You could read it up here, tradingview.com. If higher support resistance is forming on... I trade these support resistance areas on all time frames. So these support resistance areas are traded on all time frames. I place them based on the daily and the 12 hour. So I look at the daily and the 12 hour to place these support resistance areas, but they're traded on all time frames. I trade these support resistance areas on the 4 hour, on the 6 hour, on the 8 hour. I trade them on all the time frames. I place them on higher time frames. I trade them on those time frames and lower ones. No, TradingView is pretty much a charting platform, not a trading platform. Is the 4 hour too short to determine support resistance areas? I don't know. I don't like using the 4 hour to determine support resistance areas because the 4 hour chart, you see too many bounces, so you end up placing too many support resistance areas. See, I've switched to the 4 hour here on GBP JPY. So what happens when I'm looking at the 4 hour on GBP JPY? Well, I might place a support resistance area there. I might place one here. It looks like there might be one roughly here. That bounce, that wick bounce there. And then you end up having all these support resistance areas, and it becomes very hard to trade because you've got support resistance areas everywhere. I don't like that. I'd rather have, there we go. I'd rather have my support resistance areas have some room between them, so I place them on the 12 hour and the daily. I don't do broker recommendations. I don't like recommending brokers to people. I've had bad experiences doing that in the past. What do I use to place my trades? I use a broker to place my trades. I don't place them based on my chart. I place my trades on one platform and I chart on the other. That is in fact how most professional traders I know trade. Because, and this is something that I think it's important for traders to know, if you want the best charting platform, you're not going to find the best charting platform that's kind of merged with a trading platform. When you want your charting platform to be the same as your trading platform, you're going to have to make compromises to either your charting or your trading platform. If you look for the best charting platform, that's only a charting platform, and the best trading platform, and you have two separate platforms, then you can have the best of each. If you say to yourself, well, I want them to be combined and I want a charting platform and a trading platform all in one, then you're going to have to make compromises. And that's what MT4 is. It's a compromise. That's a bad one too, because it's 10 years old, MT4. Everyone asking about trades, that's going to be discussed in the third webinar in this series, not the first webinar. I've already said that I don't really discuss my trading platform. If you want to place trades with MT4, that is fine. MT4 is still a good platform for taking trades, but for charting, MT4 is atrocious. Atrocious. I mispronounced that word. All right, let's quickly. I'm not discussing trading. Whoever keeps asking me how many pips on average do I make per trade, trading is discussed in the third webinar in this series, which is held on Thursday. This webinar is purely about support resistance areas. First webinar, support resistance areas. Second webinar, candlestick analysis. Third webinar, trading. Trading is going to be discussed on Thursday. Please tune in to Thursday's webinar to discuss trading, and you can ask me all the questions you want on how I trade. Do I take psychological levels into account when placing support resistance areas? Good question. A question on support resistance areas. No, not really. I used to take psychological levels into account. For those of you who don't know what psychological levels are the big rounded numbers, such as up here, 1.9000. It's a bit high, but see 1.9000. That's a psychological level. That's a psychological barrier. When people see these big numbers, they tend to place their stop losses and targets around there. I found that concentrating too much on placing your support resistance areas around this level, around these levels, around psychological levels, it kind of makes it easy for you to make mistakes. So you'll see that support resistance is at, let's say, the 188.60, but you'll say, but wait, the psychological level is at 1900. I'm just going to shift it up a little bit just so it's in line with the psych level. I don't like doing that anymore. I used to do stuff like that, but I find my support resistance areas, they tend to be better when I place them where I see the bounces and not where the psychological level is. And that is actually a very good example, because right here we could see that the bounces on GBP/JPY are clearly from the 188.20. We got another bounce here, wick bounce from the 188.20, 188.30, roughly there. A bounce on the way down there. Price bounced here on its way up. So we could see that 188.20, 188.30, roughly around here, is a good support resistance area for GBP/JPY. Now, if I were to just put it up here, because it's a psychological level, 19000, then, that would not be a smart move. That would be a bad move, because I'm placing my support resistance area based not on price action, not on where I'm seeing bounces from price. I'm placing it based on rounded numbers because those numbers look nice to me. Those rounded numbers do have some significance, but I'd rather place my support resistance areas where the bounces are actually happening, not where the nice rounded number is. So that is a good question. Keep asking your questions about support resistance areas, guys. This webinar is going a little off track. I'm going to just disable the chat for the next webinar. I feel bad disabling chat, but people can't keep on subject, so I think I'm going to have to disable the chat in the next webinar, unfortunately. Until the end, when questions and answers time is on. Let's play support resistance areas on one more pair. Suggest a pair to me, guys, please. Preferably a pair on this list, but it doesn't have to be a pair on this list, just whatever pair you guys want. USD/CHF, I think we've already done that. AUD/JPY, that's actually a good one. I want to do AUD/JPY because we had some trades from there this week. And AUD/JPY has given us a lot of trades in the last few weeks. And specifically, a trade was closed on Monday on AUD/JPY. And I'm going to be discussing that trade on Thursday's webinar. So that is in fact a pretty good suggestion, because we're going to be discussing AUDJPY in next week's webinar. Sorry, not next week. On Thursday's webinar is what I'm trying to say. So doing the support resistance areas now would actually be pretty good. So let's go with AUDJPY. I might do another one after this. We still have some time. AUDJPY, I already know where the support resistance is, so I'm kind of cheating here a little bit. But I'll explain why I'm placing them, where I'm placing them, and you guys will kind of get a good idea of what I'm doing. So where are the support resistance areas on this pair? First one is obviously here. It's just like, it's so obvious that it's there. Why is it there? Because we got 4 bounces from there in the last 2 weeks, and most of those bounces were actually trades. Second one is down here. Why is it down here? We got 1, 2, 3 bounces in the last few weeks from this level. Bam, bam, bam. But we also got bounces here, 2 strong bounces. Bam, bam. Easy. 2 obvious support resistance areas. The other ones aren't quite as obvious, except for this one here, actually. That one's got a very, very strong bounce. Extremely strong bounce. You know, I'm willing to place a support resistance area based only on this bounce, because that bounce is so strong. So that one's easy. Now, there was one here that I have placed. Like I said, I already know where the support resistance areas for AUDJPY are, because I've been looking at this pair, just like I've been looking at it every single day for the past 2 weeks. So I already know where they are. So, you know, I'm cheating a little bit by placing them here, because I already know where to place them. I'm placing one here based on that very strong bounce there. And this one that I just placed here, this one, wait, let me mark it, just this one here. That's placed based on those 2 bounces there. So AUDJPY, very obvious support resistance areas, very strong support resistance areas. These 2 in particular, let me place the channel lines around them, because like I said, I really don't like the look of support resistance areas unless they have this around them. They just look weird to me. I really need to have these things around them for them to look right. This is a little bit of an OCD thing. Oops, not like that, like this. Bam. So yeah, the support resistance areas here, they're really, really obvious. And these ones here have led to some trades, and we'll be discussing those trades on Thursday in detail, along with other trades. We're going to be looking at failed trades too on Thursday, not just positive trades, because I don't like just looking at positive trades. Are the support resistance areas from Daily FX or other websites reliable? Maybe, I don't know. I don't use them, so I can't say whether they're reliable or not. But I would suggest that you do your own support resistance areas, because they're extremely easy to place, and it's a lot better that you do stuff yourself than it is that you rely on Daily FX. Also, I do share my support resistance areas on Forex for Noobs. I share my support resistance areas, but I share my support resistance areas only for people to compare them. So like, you place your own support resistance areas. It's an important step. You need to learn to place your own support resistance areas. Once you place your own support resistance areas, you don't go to there, sorry, you go to tools. I'll make the link easier to find. No, that's the wrong thing I've clicked. So yeah, you go to support resistance areas here, and I've listed my support resistance areas for some pairs here. I might add a few more pairs to this list here. So what you should do, you should place your own support resistance areas, then you should go to this page, and you should compare your support resistance areas to mine and see if they're roughly the same. If they're roughly the same, then you've done a decent job at placing the support resistance areas. If they're way off, then you might need to work on it some more, and you know, you could just keep working on it and then get some better placements. The idea is, and what you want to do with your support resistance areas, is place them every day. When you place them on AUDJPY, For example, the next day, just remove them and start again. Just place them again. And you want to do that over and over. You want to just keep placing them and placing them and placing them for day after day after day for 6 months, for a year. And eventually you'll start placing them perfectly. And you'll start placing good support resistance areas, and you'll see trades forming on those support resistance areas, and you'll start taking trades from those areas. It's just practice. Can you consider a channel a support resistance area? Generally, channels are 2 support resistance areas. Or do you mean a channel trending down or up? What about trend lines? I don't use trend lines. There's nothing wrong with trend lines. I just don't use them. I don't need them in my trading. If you want to use them, feel free, but I personally don't feel any need to use trend lines. Do I suggest updating your support resistance areas until price confirms them? Sure. If price just pushes through an area that you're unsure about, then update it. Move the area around to match the most recent price action. What about patterns such as double tops, triangles? I don't use those. Do I still use New York closed candles? My candles are GMT plus 2, which I believe is the same as New York close. I know GMT plus 2 is not New York close, but I think they appear the same as New York closed candles, except for the daily candle, I believe. Can you add support resistance areas that are minor, such as the 6-hour chart support resistance areas, if it meets your trading criteria? Yeah, if you want, but I don't really do it. I don't go down to the 6-hour to confirm my support resistance areas. I place them based on the 12-hour and daily, and I just go with those. I'm just going to start ignoring questions that are about trading that aren't on subject. I've said it 100 times now. It's a support resistance area webinar. Stop losses and stuff are going to be discussed on Thursday's webinar. Can the second one from the top be explained based on recent data? I don't know what you mean. Do I use Fibonacci as a confluence to determine if a support resistance area is valid? No, I don't use Fibonacci. I've never had a need for Fibonacci. I'm completely happy with just placing my support resistance areas. I'm not saying that Fibonacci doesn't work and that it's not useful. I'm just saying that I personally do not have any use for it. I like to keep my trading as simple as possible. For me, simplicity is placing support resistance areas and looking for bounces or breaks of those support resistance areas. Which is something we'll be discussing more in the coming webinars. What about moving averages? No, I don't use moving averages either. I don't use anything other than support resistance areas on my chart visually. That's a good question. What happens after a resistance area gets broken? Do I remove it? No, I don't. It doesn't matter if an area of support resistance gets broken. It really doesn't. I know that that goes against what some people you may have heard have said about support resistance, but it doesn't matter. Wait, I'm gonna answer your question with an example, but I'm just going to make these areas smaller because I drew them a little big. And It just doesn't look that good when they're that big. So give me a second here and I'll answer your question. All right. So the question is, once a support resistance area is broken, do you remove it? And the answer is no, I don't remove it. You do not need to remove support resistance areas that have been broken. And let me show you an example as to why you don't need to remove them. So price came down to here and it bounced from here. Price came down to there and it bounced from there. So this support resistance area was placed here based on those two bounces. That support resistance area then broke here. So if I were to remove that support resistance area, then I wouldn't have that there anymore. And I would just have to go and replace it when we got these continued bounces here. Support resistance areas, they last through breaks. When a support resistance area is broken, when a support area is broken, when price breaks through it, then that area just becomes resistance. Price is going to bounce this way from it. When price goes above it, price is going to bounce from it as support. It's going to bounce that way from it. I don't remove these areas. If they're broken, then whatever, who cares? As we can clearly see with this example, we've got a bounce there, a bounce there. Price broke through it here. Price came up, it bounced from it, it bounced from it, it bounced from it, and it bounced from it. It's bounced from this area a lot of times. Just because it was broken that one time, it didn't ruin this area. It didn't make it so that this area was, not worth trading. It's still a valid area, and this area gave us a lot of trades in the last 2 weeks, and those are trades that I'm going to be looking at and discussing in the third webinar in this series. How reliable is support resistance during major news events? I do not trade during major news events. I generally find that price, when it stalls from a major news movement, it'll stall on top of a support resistance area. That's something that happens quite often. Does support resistance work with commodities as well? Yes, it does. I don't trade commodities, but I know a lot of people who do in the advanced course. A lot of people in the forum trade commodities and they use the same support resistance areas, the same method for placing them. They use it for commodities and it works fine for them. I don't trade them personally. I don't like trading commodities. Just not a fan. Yep, support becomes resistance. They're support resistance areas. They're not just support or just resistance. They're areas that get placed on your chart and they just stay there. Well, they get adjusted, obviously, if price stops bouncing from them, but, they're placed and they stay there. Once they're broken, they just stay there. I'm going to try read this question. Hello, my name is Tyler. If I trade on the 4-hour chart and price breaks my resistance level and closes significantly, but on the daily it closes below the resistance after the day closes, is the resistance still valid because on the daily chart it closed below the resistance area? Yeah. It doesn't matter where it closes. As long as it closes in the general area, it doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be precise. A wick bounce is enough. Do I trade dollar index? No, I trade just Forex. But I know people who use my strategy to trade other markets. I don't think I know anyone who trades the dollar index. I know some futures, and I've tried some futures myself with my strategy and it works well. But yeah, dollar index, no. I don't know anyone who uses my strategy on dollar index. So, I don't know. I assume it works because my strategy is based on price action, and price action is the same on all markets. You can apply price action to the shoe market, shoe sales for a store. You can apply price action to that. I mean, price action is just price action. It's just reading price, and it should work fine on all markets. Could I please explain why I placed an SR area at 83.67? I believe I've already explained that. It's based on this bounce here. See these two bounces here back in September? Two strong bounces there. We could adjust this one down to here slightly. We could keep it up there. It doesn't really matter. There is support resistance roughly around this area. This might be the better placement based on the more recent data here. But like I've been saying since the start of the webinar, I'm not bothered with being terribly accurate. If I have my support resistance area up here and price breaks up and approaches this area and it bounces from here instead, right? It bounces from there. So price stalls right on top of here. What am I going to do? I'm just going to adjust my support resistance area and pull it down to here. Because we have those bounces there, two bounces here. And then we have price currently bouncing from here. So then it would make sense to adjust it. So I'm not terribly bothered with the accuracy. If it's here, it's fine. If it's slightly lower, it's fine. I'm going to let price confirm this area for me. So whenever I'm unsure about a support resistance area, I just throw it up where I think it fits best. And if I'm wrong, price will tell me I'm wrong. Because that's what's important in trading price action. It's what price is doing currently. And price, when it moves up there, that's going to tell me, hey, Nick, you placed that support resistance area perfectly because I'm bouncing from here right now. Or it's going to say, hey, Nick, you suck. You placed that support resistance area wrong. I'm just going to cut straight through it. I don't care. You know, but price is going to confirm it for me. So I'm not too bothered with getting it accurate the first time. But you know what? Now that you mention it, 83.67, perhaps down here at around about 83.30 makes more sense because we got two bounces there. And those are way more recent than these bounces here. They're kind of very close. Visually, they're very close, but yeah, those two bounces there. See that one there and this one here. Also this one here, actually. 3 bounces and a wick bounce there. So there you go, 4 bounces from that area. That looks slightly more significant. So yeah, you're right. I'm going to adjust this one down. It's slightly lower. This is the 83, let's just call it 83.30 to round it up. Everything is recorded. Always. All webinars are recorded. It will be recorded. You read my scalping strategy using price action. Do I use 12-hour support resistance on my scalping strategy? No, I use 5-minute support resistance on my scalping strategy. It's a different strategy. So it's the same method for placing support resistance areas really, but I just do it on the 5-minute chart. But yeah, it's a different strategy. Reynold, hi Nick, how do we get access to the forum? The forum is for, how do I explain this? The forum is a feature of the advanced course. It's for advanced course members only. It's not a public forum. Do I target just 100 pips per week? We'll be talking about targets in the 3rd webinar. Support resistance questions only, please. Where is the scalping strategy? I'll send you a link to that with in the webinar post. When I post this webinar recording to the blog, I'll post a link to the price action strategy. Sorry, the scalping strategy. I'm really sorry about the name situation, guys, that no one can see each other's names. I'll fix that for tomorrow. Another thing I want to say is sorry if this webinar was a little messy. I'm going to disable the chat tomorrow. That way I don't get sidetracked by questions that are off subject. Also, this is the first public webinar I've done in 8 months. So I'm a little rusty on doing webinars. I do webinars every week for advanced course members, but with the advanced course members, it's like smaller webinars. It's like 30, 40, 50 people. And I know all the people personally. So like, it's kind of easy to just chat. But when you've got like 1,000 people in a webinar and they're all asking questions and stuff like that, I kind of get a little nervous and a little flustered, and I get sidetracked, and I might mess up and not discuss everything I want to and not cover things as well as possible. And I am sorry about that. I wish I was more of a, salesperson and could, dazzle people with my public speaking, but that's just not me. I try my best, and sometimes I don't cover everything I want to, and I don't articulate myself properly. But when you got 1,000 people in a room and you're trying to explain everything you want to them, it gets a bit tough. Yes, you get a recording. How successful is trading using only support resistance areas? I know I said I use only support resistance areas earlier in this webinar, but I didn't mean it that way. What I meant is visually on my chart, all you see is support resistance areas. You don't see any indicators. I still use candlestick analysis, which is a major part of my strategy, and which is what we're going to be discussing tomorrow. Tomorrow is candlestick analysis. That is very important, candlestick analysis. And I'm not using only support resistance areas. I just mean I don't have any indicators or any other visual thing on my chart other than support resistance areas. And how successful is trading my strategy? For me, it is very successful. For a lot of people who trade with me, it's very successful. But also for a lot of people who don't use it properly, or who don't do risk management, or who suck at trading psychology, for them it's unsuccessful. So it really depends on the person. When will the advanced course be available? I'm not sure. Yeah, tomorrow chat's disabled, for sure. When's the next opportunity to join the advanced course? I don't like, I'm sorry, but I just don't like discussing the advanced course in the webinar, because I feel like, I don't know how to explain it. I'd rather not discuss the advanced course in the webinar. I'll, at some point, it'll probably be open for new members at some point in the next month. Can you use this strategy to build up a small account? It's not really support resistance based question, but yeah, you can. I mean, people do it. John, that question's already been answered, but I totally understand people missing questions because you can't be at the screen the whole time sometimes. So your question is, do you use support and resistance from the 12-hour daily for your scalping strategy on the 5-minute chart? And the answer is no, I redraw them on the 5-minute chart. It's a different strategy, so, different support resistance areas. Do I use compounding or swing? No, I don't. I don't think there's any support resistance area questions left. I think this webinar has gone on for a lot longer than planned. Thank you, John. I'm glad it seems most people enjoyed the webinar. It seems most people stuck around for a good hour and a half. So that's nice to see. Tomorrow's webinar, we're going to be discussing candlestick analysis. Candlestick analysis is a very important part of my strategy. And in conjunction with support resistance areas, candlestick analysis allows you to take really cool trades, which is what we're going to be discussing on Thursday. So tomorrow's webinar is on candlestick analysis. I'm going to say it, but no one's going to listen. Well, no, a lot of people are going to listen because a lot of people were listening today, which I appreciate a lot, but a lot of people aren't going to listen. In tomorrow's webinar, please keep the questions on subject candlestick analysis only in tomorrow's webinar. And we could also discuss support resistance areas in tomorrow's webinar because, you know, we're going to be looking at how it links candlestick analysis and support resistance areas work together. So hopefully we can keep questions on subject tomorrow, but I will be disabling chat for most of the day, most of the webinar tomorrow, so I can get through everything I want to get through. So again, we have a bunch of questions not on subject. Not talking about entering trades. Oh yeah, you see your name. How'd you do that? Most people don't have their name showing up. Hey, thanks for linking the scalping strategy. That's a big help. I'm looking at releasing the Trading Psychology podcast. It's a free podcast because like 99% of what I do in Forex is free. I think mid-March, roughly. I've started to realize that trading psychology is arguably the most important part of trading, because even if someone has a good strategy, they could still screw up just because they're not trading the strategy well, and because they don't trust themselves and they don't trust the strategy and they make a lot of mistakes. So yeah, that's the idea behind the psychology podcast, and I will be going through the trading psychology in depth, and I'll probably be starting around about March 14th, March 15th, something like that. Manny has a good question about support resistance. Any benefit on weekly support resistance areas? Yeah, I guess. Weekly support resistance areas tend to be a lot stronger. I don't usually place them on the weekly. But if you want to, you can. They tend to be a lot stronger, but I don't know. I like to place my support resistance areas on timeframes I actually trade, and I don't trade the weekly charts, so I don't place them based on those. So much is going on in the chat, I can't see it all. Thank you so much for attending, guys. There's just an incredible, I think this is a record-breaking webinar for me. And it's made me very nervous because it's been a crazy amount of people here. For some reason, it's saying 168 viewers, though. I don't understand. 168, but then up here it says 573. don't really understand how this software works. Was this software good for you guys? Did it look good to you? Like, was the video good and all that stuff? $168 on the YouTube link. Maybe it depends what portal they're watching it through. If they're watching it on YouTube, it'll count them as viewers. But then if they're watching through this software, it might count them as separate viewers. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Other than timeframes, wait, who said that? Someone just said, right, other than timeframes, TradingView doesn't seem any better than MT4. That's crazy. TradingView has so many cool features. Look at this. This is, my support resistance area. Another reason I place these areas around them. Don't get me started on TradingView because I love this platform so much that I could just go on for ages. But you can place alerts, SMS alerts, whenever price hits this area, just the blue outline, it sends you an SMS alert. That's like a crazy cool feature. It just has so many crazy features. You can access it on your mobile phone and on your tablet, which you can't do with MT4. I know they have apps for it, but it's not the same. Accessing the exact same charts with the exact same support resistance areas on every platform, that's just insane. It has this tool, which you don't get on MT4. It allows you to set out your target and stop for a trade. Either green is the target. You don't get that on MT4. If you think MT4 is comparable as a charting platform, not as a trading platform, as a charting platform to TradingView, you are sorely mistaken. You can set alerts on MT4, but you can't set alerts on top of an area because areas don't exist on MT4. It's a different type of alert. It's comparable, but it's different. Yeah, I hate MT4. It's just like MT4 is 10-year-old technology and people still use it to trade in 2016. I think it came out in like 2007 or maybe 2008. So it's not quite 10-year-old, but I just call it 10-year-old because it's a nice round number. But MT4 is just so old, and yeah, it's updated often, but the core of it is still 10 years old. And it's just so behind its time. Not behind the time, behind the times. It's so behind the times. And, there's so many modern trading platforms that are so much better. TradingView is one of them. CTrader is awesome compared to MT4. CTrader, and CTrader is free, so that's another platform that's pretty cool. MT5 even. MT5 is better. It doesn't have access to all the indicators you get on MT4, but it is a better platform. MT5 is heaps better. TradingView doesn't link up to your broker. It's just a charting platform. It's pure charting. Has nothing to do with your actual broker. So you can't take trades from this platform. It's just charting. David is saying, how about MT5? Yeah, MT5 is a pretty decent platform. I'm currently trading with MT5 actually. I'm taking my trades on an MT5 platform. I like it. I don't like the charts as much as TradingView, but as a trading platform, MT5 is pretty good. Doesn't matter if you're using a different broker and using TradingView as charts. No, that's what I do. Believe it or not, most professional traders I know are using one platform for charting and one platform for trading. It's pretty normal in trading. How do you change the colors of your candles? I don't know. I don't really do it that often. I don't actually do it at all. There you go. Double click a candle. Go to style. And yeah. Yeah, CTrader is a good platform. I enjoy CTrader. Unfortunately for me, CTrader doesn't. There's no broker that I want to trade with, which uses CTrader, which is unfortunate. I wish I could use CTrader as a trading platform, but I can't. I would still chart with TradingView, but I would use CTrader to take my trades over MT5. So you use TradingView for analysis and MT5 for entries, exactly. Can you calculate average daily ranges? I honestly don't know. I'm sure there might be an indicator for it, maybe not. That is one benefit of MT4 and MT5. You get more indicators. You can get an average daily range indicator. Not sure if you could do that with TradingView, but I don't use that indicator. So anyway, guys, I think I'm going to call an end to this webinar. Yeah, I think we've discussed everything that we've come here to discuss. If this webinar seems a bit kind of, I don't know, like some of the stuff doesn't make sense, keep in mind that there are 2 webinars after this, and it's all going to be joined together in the last webinar. And when it's all joined together and you start seeing how everything works together, what you learned today will make a lot more sense. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I hope it was useful for you guys. I'm going to end